In the quiet suburbs of Atlanta, a seemingly ordinary Wednesday afternoon would become the day that changed young Andre Thompson's life forever. The 14-year-old boy wasn't thinking about fame or recognition when he spotted smoke rising from his neighbor's house. He was simply following his instincts. The sun was just beginning to set when Andre was walking home from basketball practice. He had stayed late to work on his three-pointers, something his coach had suggested he improve. The familiar streets of his neighborhood were bathed in golden light, and the scent of blooming magnolias filled the air. But something else caught his attention, an unfamiliar, acrid smell. 2 houses down from where he stood, wisps of gray smoke were curling out from beneath the garage door of the Peterson family home. Andre knew their youngest daughter had recently started using a wheelchair after an accident, and Mrs. Peterson often needed help getting around too. His heart began to race as he noticed both cars were parked in the driveway. Without hesitation, Andre dropped his basketball and sprinted toward the house. The smoke was getting thicker now, and he could hear the faint sound of a smoke alarm from inside. He ran to the front door and pounded on it with all his might. "Is anyone home?" "There's smoke coming from your garage," he shouted, his voice carrying across the quiet street. When no one answered, Andre tried the door handle. It was unlocked. The moment he pushed it open, thick smoke billowed out, making him cough and his eyes water. He pulled his t-shirt up over his nose and mouth, remembering what he'd learned in school about staying low in a fire. The heat was intense, but all he could think about was the Peterson family. "Mrs. Peterson." "Mr. Peterson," he called out, crawling through the smoke-filled living room. The sound of coughing from upstairs gave him direction. Andre found Mrs. Peterson trying to help her daughter down the stairs, both of them struggling with the wheelchair at the top landing. The garage, something caught fire, Mrs. Peterson managed between coughs. "We couldn't get down fast enough." Andre didn't waste any time. Despite his size, adrenaline gave him strength he didn't know he had. He helped support Mrs. Peterson on one side while they carefully guided her daughter down the stairs step by step. The smoke was getting thicker, and Andre could hear the crackling of flames from the garage. Time was running out. Once they reached the bottom of the stairs, he helped Mrs. Peterson get her daughter out of the wheelchair and supported them both as they made their way to the front door. The 3 of them emerged from the house just as the first fire truck rounded the corner, its sirens piercing the evening air. Neighbors had gathered on the street, and several rushed forward to help the Petersons. Andre sat on the curb, coughing and catching his breath, when he noticed Mr. Peterson wasn't with them. His heart dropped. He hadn't seen him in the house. He was about to run back inside when Mrs. Peterson touched his shoulder. "My husband's at work," she said, as if reading his mind. "He's safe." The fire department quickly contained the blaze, which had started from an electrical malfunction in the garage. As the smoke cleared and the excitement died down, news of Andre's quick thinking and bravery spread through the neighborhood. Someone had captured video of him helping the Petersons out of the house, and within hours, it was circulating on social media. The story caught fire online faster than the garage had in real life. Local news stations picked it up first, praising the young hero who had risked his life to save his neighbors. Then national outlets got wind of it, and before Andre knew what was happening, the video had gone viral. But what made this story truly extraordinary was who happened to see it. Elon Musk, known for his spontaneous and generous gestures, came across the video during his late-night social media browsing. The tech billionaire was immediately struck by Andre's selfless act and quick thinking. Without any publicity or fanfare, he reached out to Andre's family through his team. The young hero had no idea what was coming. He was simply happy that Mrs. Peterson and her daughter were safe. His parents had always taught him that doing the right thing was its own reward. But fate had something spectacular in store for him. As the story continued to spread, Andre remained humble, insisting he'd done what anyone would do in that situation. He visited the Petersons in the temporary housing they'd moved into while their home was being repaired, helping them with groceries and spending time with their daughter, who had become like a little sister to him. The neighborhood rallied around the Peterson family, organizing fundraisers and helping with repairs. But the biggest surprise was still to come, a surprise that would turn this local hero's story into national news and change his life in ways he never could have imagined. 2 weeks after the fire, Andre was sitting in his family's living room, helping his younger brother with math homework, when their mother received an unexpected phone call. She listened intently, her eyes growing wider by the second. Andre watched as she sat down slowly, her hand trembling slightly as she held the phone. "Yes, we'll be here," she said finally, her voice filled with barely contained excitement. "Thank you for calling." She hung up and stared at her sons in disbelief. "That was someone from Tesla Motors," she said slowly. "They want to come to our house tomorrow. They said Elon Musk has something for Andre." The news spread through their tight-knit community like wildfire. Neighbors dropped by throughout the evening, each offering their own theories about what might be coming. Andre's father, a construction worker who had taught his son the importance of humility, reminded everyone that just having their story recognized was honor enough. The next morning, Andre could hardly focus in school. His teachers, who had already been proud of his heroic actions, noticed his distraction but understood completely. Even his principal had mentioned the upcoming visit during morning announcements, causing Andre's classmates to buzz with excitement. As the final bell rang, Andre rushed home to find his street transformed. News vans lined the curb, and a small crowd of neighbors and curious onlookers had gathered near his house. But what caught his eye was the sleek black Tesla Model X parked in his driveway, surrounded by a small team of professionally dressed people. His parents were already home, dressed in their Sunday best, looking both proud and slightly overwhelmed. The Peterson family was there too, Mrs. Peterson holding a bouquet of flowers and her daughter beaming from her wheelchair. The sight of them healthy and safe made Andre's heart swell with joy, reminding him that this was what really mattered. A tall woman in a crisp suit approached them, introducing herself as Tesla's Regional Community Relations Director. "Andre," she said warmly, "your actions touched a lot of people, including Mr. Musk. While he couldn't be here personally, he wanted to make sure you received this special gift." The crowd fell silent as a massive car carrier turned onto their street. Sitting atop it, gleaming in the afternoon sun, was something that made Andre's jaw drop. A brand new Cybertruck. Its angular, futuristic design looked like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, and its silver exterior reflected the sunlight like a mirror. "This is the first production model Cybertruck to be delivered in this state," the director explained, as the vehicle was carefully unloaded. "Mr. Musk was particularly impressed by how you didn't hesitate to help others in need. He believes that kind of quick thinking and bravery deserves to be recognized." Andre stood speechless, his eyes fixed on the vehicle that looked more like a spacecraft than a truck. His father placed a steady hand on his shoulder, grounding him in the moment. The director handed them the keys, along with a personal note from Elon Musk himself. With trembling hands, Andre opened the envelope and read aloud, "Your courage in running toward danger to help others exemplifies the spirit of innovation and compassion that will drive humanity forward. While this truck can't be driven until you're of legal age, let it serve as a reminder that one person's brave actions can inspire millions. Keep being the change you wish to see in the world. Elon." Local news cameras captured the moment as Andre and his family walked around the Cybertruck in awe. Mrs. Peterson's daughter couldn't contain her excitement, asking if she could touch the unique exterior. Andre immediately helped her closer, demonstrating the same thoughtfulness that had saved her life. The Tesla team spent the next hour showing Andre's family all the features of the Cybertruck. They explained how the bulletproof exterior and shatter-resistant windows were designed to protect passengers, much like how Andre had protected his neighbors. The advanced air filtration system, they pointed out, would have been helpful in a situation like the fire. What touched Andre's family most was learning that the gift came with a fully paid insurance plan and maintenance package until Andre turned 18. Musk had thought of everything, ensuring that this generous gift wouldn't become a burden on the family's finances. As the excitement of the day began to wind down, Andre noticed Mrs. Peterson wiping tears from her eyes. He walked over and gave her a gentle hug. "Thank you," she whispered. "Not just for saving us, but for showing my daughter what a real hero looks like." The story could have ended there, with a generous gift and a grateful community. But this was just the beginning of how one brave act would create ripples of change throughout their community and beyond. The Cybertruck sitting in Andre's driveway would become more than just a reward, it would become a symbol of hope and inspiration for everyone who heard their story. As the sun set on that remarkable day, Andre sat on his front porch, looking at the Cybertruck that now belonged to him. But his mind wasn't on the expensive gift or the attention he'd received. Instead, he was thinking about how he could use this platform to help more people in his community. Little did he know, his story was about to inspire a chain of events that would change not just his life, but the lives of countless others. The morning after receiving the Cybertruck, Andre woke up thinking it had all been a dream. But when he looked out his bedroom window, there it was, gleaming in the early morning sunlight, parked safely in their newly cleared garage. His father had stayed up late rearranging things to make space for their extraordinary new addition to the family. What happened next surprised everyone, especially Andre. His story began appearing on national morning shows, and social media couldn't get enough of the young hero and his futuristic reward. But it wasn't just the Cybertruck that captured people's attention, it was Andre's response to all the attention that truly touched hearts across the country. During his first television interview, conducted right in his front yard, the reporter asked what he planned to do with his newfound fame. Andre's answer was simple and unrehearsed: "I want to start a safety awareness program at my school. Most kids my age know what to do in a fire, but knowing and doing are different things. Maybe my story can help bridge that gap." His words resonated with educators across the country. Within days, Andre's inbox was flooded with requests from schools wanting him to speak to their students. His parents, careful to ensure their son maintained a normal teenage life, helped him balance his new responsibilities with his schoolwork and basketball practice. The local fire department was one of the first to reach out. They saw an opportunity to turn Andre's experience into a teaching moment. Chief Rodriguez, who had been on scene the day of the fire, proposed a partnership. Together, they would develop a youth emergency response program, teaching young people not just what to do in emergencies, but how to overcome the fear that often paralyzes people in crisis situations. Andre threw himself into the project with the same determination he'd shown during the fire. He worked with firefighters to create presentations that would engage young people. Instead of just reciting rules and procedures, he shared his personal experience, describing the thoughts and feelings that had raced through his mind that day. The Cybertruck became an unexpected part of these presentations. Andre's father would drive it to schools, since Andre wasn't old enough yet, and its presence always drew crowds. "If you're brave enough to help others," Andre would tell his young audience, "you never know what amazing things might happen. But that's not why we help because it's right." One presentation particularly stood out. At an elementary school across town, a young girl approached Andre after his talk. Her eyes were fixed on the ground as she spoke softly about how her apartment building didn't have proper fire alarms. Her mother had tried complaining to the landlord, but nothing had changed. This revelation sparked something in Andre. He reached out to his growing network of supporters, including the local news station that had first covered his story. Within days, they ran an investigative piece about fire safety violations in low-income housing complexes across the city. The story caught the attention of city officials, leading to a massive inspection initiative. The Cybertruck, meanwhile, became a symbol of positive change in the community. Every weekend, Andre's father would use it to help deliver donated furniture to families who had lost their homes to fires. The spacious trunk that had impressed tech enthusiasts online was now being used to transport essential supplies to those in need. Andre's school principal noticed a change in the student body too. Reports of bullying decreased, and more students were signing up for community service projects. "It's the Andre effect," teachers would say with a smile. Students who had never spoken to each other before were now working together on safety committees and emergency response teams. The Peterson family's house was nearly finished with repairs, and the community had rallied together to make it even better than before. They installed a state-of-the-art fire prevention system, and several local companies donated accessibility modifications to make it easier for their daughter to move around independently. One evening, as Andre helped Mrs. Peterson plant new flowers in her restored garden, she shared something that made him understand the true impact of his actions. "You know," she said, carefully patting soil around a young rose bush, "my daughter used to feel like her wheelchair made her a burden to others. But after seeing how you helped us that day, she's different. Yesterday, she told me she wants to become a counselor for other kids with disabilities. She said if you could be brave that day, she can be brave every day." The story reached Elon Musk again through social media, where people were sharing updates about how Andre was using his gift to benefit others. The tech billionaire took to Twitter, writing, "This is why we believe in young people. Andre didn't just save lives that day, he's building a legacy of safety and community service. This is the future we need." As the autumn leaves began to turn and the memory of that fiery afternoon began to fade, Andre's impact only grew stronger. Schools across the state were adopting his emergency response program, and other communities were launching similar initiatives. The Cybertruck, still too new for him to drive, sat in his garage as a reminder that courage and kindness can come from the most unexpected places. But for Andre, the greatest reward wasn't the futuristic vehicle or the media attention. It was the knowledge that his split-second decision to help others had created a ripple effect of positive change. As he often told the students he spoke to, heroes don't wear capes or drive fancy trucks. They're just regular people who choose to help when help is needed. Winter arrived, bringing with it an unexpected opportunity for Andre and his Cybertruck to prove their worth in a different kind of emergency. The city was hit with the heaviest snowfall it had seen in decades, leaving many elderly and disabled residents stranded in their homes. The temperature had dropped well below freezing when Andre's phone lit up with a message from Mrs. Peterson. Her daughter's medical supply delivery couldn't make it through the snow-covered streets, and they were running low on essential items. Without hesitation, Andre and his father sprang into action, knowing the Cybertruck's robust design and all-wheel drive would be perfect for the treacherous conditions. "This is exactly what this truck was meant for," his father said as they carefully loaded up supplies from the medical distribution center. The Cybertruck's angular form cut through the snowy streets like a futuristic icebreaker, reaching homes that regular vehicles couldn't access. What started as a single supply run for the Petersons quickly evolved into a community-wide relief effort. Local news stations picked up the story once again, but this time with a different angle. "Local hero's Cybertruck becomes winter emergency response vehicle," the headlines read. The footage of the distinctive silver vehicle plowing through snow-covered streets to deliver medical supplies and groceries to stranded residents captured the public's imagination in a whole new way. Andre coordinated with his school's technology club to create a simple website where people could request assistance. His older cousin, who had a commercial driver's license, joined the effort, allowing them to run multiple shifts. The Cybertruck's battery performed exceptionally well in the cold conditions, a fact that impressed even the most skeptical observers. During one particularly challenging delivery, they encountered an elderly couple who had been without power for 2 days. The Cybertruck's power outlet system, designed for camping and construction work, became an impromptu power source for their essential medical equipment until utility crews could restore their electricity. "You've turned that reward into a rescue vehicle," the fire chief commented during a community emergency response meeting. This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need in crisis situations. The local emergency management office began incorporating the Cybertruck into their severe weather response plans, recognizing its unique capabilities. The winter crisis also brought an unexpected development in Andre's safety awareness program. Students who had attended his presentations began organizing their own neighborhood check-in systems, making sure vulnerable residents had supplies and support during the severe weather. The Andre effect was evolving into something bigger than anyone had anticipated. One evening, as Andre helped unload supplies at the community center, he noticed a group of young children watching the Cybertruck with fascination. He took a moment to talk with them, explaining how the vehicle's unique design helped it navigate through deep snow. But remember, he added, it's not about having a special truck. It's about looking out for your neighbors. That's what makes a community strong. The story took another surprising turn when a major automotive magazine requested to feature the Cybertruck in an article. But instead of focusing on its technical specifications, they wanted to highlight how it had become a symbol of community service. The photo shoot captured Andre and his father loading supplies, working with volunteer groups, and helping elderly residents, showing the vehicle's practical impact on real people's lives. The article caught the attention of Tesla's engineering team, who were impressed by how their vehicle was being used. They reached out to Andre's family with an unusual request. They wanted to document how the Cybertruck performed in these real-world emergency situations. The data would help them refine future models for similar use cases. As winter's grip began to loosen. As spring blossomed, Andre's story took an unexpected turn when his school announced a regional youth leadership conference. The event would bring together students from across the state to discuss community service and emergency preparedness. Andre, who had once shied away from public speaking, was asked to be the keynote speaker. The day before the conference, Andre sat in his backyard, nervously reviewing his speech. The Cybertruck gleamed in the driveway, a constant reminder of how much his life had changed in less than a year. His phone buzzed with a notification, another message from Elon Musk's team. They had been keeping tabs on how the Cybertruck was being used and were sending something special for the conference. The package arrived that evening, a detailed presentation showing how Andre's community service initiatives had inspired Tesla to develop a new community response vehicle program. They were exploring ways to adapt future Cybertruck models specifically for emergency response situations, based on the experiences from Andre's winter rescue missions. The conference hall was packed with over 1,000 students, teachers, and community leaders. As Andre took the stage, he noticed the Peterson family sitting in the front row, their daughter giving him a thumbs up. His knees were shaking, but when he began to speak, his voice was clear and confident. When I ran into that burning house, he began, I wasn't thinking about rewards or recognition. I was thinking about my neighbors who needed help. That's what community is about, seeing a need and taking action, even when it's scary, even when you're not sure you can make a difference. He shared stories from the winter crisis, describing how students across the city had organized their own support networks. The Cybertruck might have helped us reach people, he explained, but it was the willingness of young people to step up that really made the difference. Every one of you has the power to change someone's life. During the presentation, Andre unveiled the new initiative he'd been working on with local emergency services, a youth emergency response network that would connect student volunteers with training opportunities and community service projects. The program would use an app developed by his school's coding club, allowing young people to coordinate their efforts during crisis situations. The audience was captivated, but what happened next left everyone speechless. A video message from Elon Musk himself appeared on the giant screen. The tech entrepreneur praised not just Andre's initial act of bravery, but how he had turned a reward into a tool for community service. What impresses me most, Musk said in the video, is how you've shown that technology is most valuable when it serves humanity. You've inspired us to think differently about our vehicle's potential for community impact. That's why Tesla is launching a grant program to provide emergency response vehicles to communities in need, and we want you to help guide this initiative." The announcement was met with thunderous applause. After the presentation, students crowded around Andre, eager to share their own ideas for community service projects. One girl described her plan to create an emergency response team for her rural community. Another student wanted to start a program teaching basic emergency medical skills to high school students. Local business leaders who attended the conference were equally impressed. By the end of the day, several had pledged support for the Youth Emergency Response Network, offering everything from equipment to training facilities. A tech startup offered to help develop the app further, adding features specifically designed for crisis coordination. The conference also reunited Andre with some of the people he'd helped during the winter crisis. An elderly couple he'd assisted brought homemade cookies and shared how their granddaughter, inspired by Andre's story, had started a neighborhood check-in program for seniors in their community. That evening, as the conference was winding down, Andre found himself sitting with Mrs. Peterson's daughter. She had recently started volunteering at a rehabilitation center, helping other young people adjust to life with disabilities. "You know what the best part of your story is?" she asked. "It shows that sometimes the scariest moments in our lives can lead to the most amazing opportunities to help others." The local newspaper's coverage of the conference went viral, focusing on how one act of bravery had sparked a youth-led movement for community service. The article highlighted how Andre had transformed from a reluctant hero into a leader who was inspiring his generation to take active roles in their communities. As Andre helped pack up after the conference, his father pulled him aside. "I'm proud of you," he said, "not because of the Cybertruck or the attention, but because you've stayed true to who you are. You've shown that it's not about having the most expensive tools, it's about having the heart to help others." The success of the conference led to invitations from schools across the country, but Andre remained focused on building something sustainable in his own community. He understood that real change happens through consistent effort and dedication, not just inspiring speeches and grand gestures. Summer arrived with an unexpected challenge that would test Andre's leadership skills in ways he never imagined. A severe thunderstorm system was approaching their region, and meteorologists warned it could be one of the worst in decades. The community that had come together during the winter crisis now faced a different kind of emergency. The Youth Emergency Response Network that Andre had helped establish was about to face its first major test. The app they'd developed buzzed with activity as young volunteers coordinated with local emergency services to prepare for the coming storm. Andre's Cybertruck, which had proved invaluable during the winter, was once again ready to serve. "This is what we've been training for," Andre told his team during their final preparation meeting. The local community center had become their command post, with maps spread across tables and students coordinating different aspects of their emergency response plan. The Cybertruck's large battery capacity would serve as a mobile power station if needed, a feature they had specifically prepared for. The storm hit with devastating force. Trees crashed down across power lines, streets flooded, and hundreds of families were forced to evacuate to emergency shelters. Andre and his team worked tirelessly alongside adult emergency responders, using their app to coordinate rescue efforts and deliver supplies to stranded residents. The Cybertruck's high clearance and waterproof design proved crucial as they navigated flooded streets. Andre's father, who had become an expert at handling the vehicle in extreme conditions, worked with the fire department to reach areas that were inaccessible to regular emergency vehicles. The truck's built-in power system became a lifeline for people who needed to charge essential medical devices. One particular rescue stood out. An elderly couple was trapped in their home when floodwaters rose rapidly around their property. Traditional emergency vehicles couldn't reach them, but the Cybertruck's design allowed it to forge through the deep water. The rescue was captured on video by a news helicopter, showing the distinctive silver vehicle creating a wake as it approached the stranded couple's home. The Youth Network's app proved its worth during the crisis. Volunteers could quickly update the locations of downed power lines, flooded streets, and people needing assistance. The real-time information helped emergency services respond more effectively, and the coordination between young volunteers and professional responders became a model for other communities. During the height of the storm, Andre received an unexpected call. Tesla's engineering team had been monitoring the Cybertruck's performance through its onboard systems, and they were impressed by how it was handling the extreme conditions. They requested permission to use the data to improve future models, specifically for emergency response situations. The community center became a hub of activity as the storm raged on. Andre's team had set up charging stations powered by the Cybertruck, allowing people to keep their phones working and stay connected with loved ones. Young volunteers took shifts staffing the center, providing updates through their app and ensuring everyone had access to necessary supplies. Mrs. Peterson's daughter had taken charge of coordinating assistance for people with disabilities, using her personal experience to ensure their specific needs were met. Her leadership in this area proved invaluable, as many evacuation plans hadn't fully considered the challenges faced by people with mobility issues. The storm lasted 3 days, but its impact on the community would be felt for much longer. As the waters receded and the cleanup began, stories of the Youth Emergency Response Network's effectiveness began to spread. News outlets picked up on how a group of teenagers, inspired by Andre's original act of bravery, had created a sophisticated emergency response system that had potentially saved lives. What impressed people most wasn't just the technology or the organization, it was the dedication of the young volunteers. They had shown that age wasn't a barrier to making a real difference in crisis situations. The Cybertruck, which had started as a reward for one boy's bravery, had become a symbol of youth empowerment and community service. Local officials took notice. The city council invited Andre and his team to present their emergency response model at their next meeting. They wanted to explore ways to implement similar programs in other neighborhoods, recognizing that engaging young people in emergency preparedness could strengthen the entire community's resilience. As Andre prepared for the presentation, he reflected on how far they'd come from that first day when he'd run into a burning house. The Cybertruck sitting in his driveway was no longer just a fancy vehicle, it was a tool that had helped prove young people could be valuable assets in emergency situations. The storm response had taught them all important lessons about leadership and community service. During the cleanup efforts, Andre shared these insights with his team. Real leadership isn't about having the best equipment or the most advanced technology. It's about bringing people together and helping them see that they have the power to make a difference. As autumn approached, Andre's story took an unexpected turn when Tesla announced their first Youth Innovation Summit. The event would bring together young people who had used technology to serve their communities, and Andre's emergency response network had caught their attention in a big way. The invitation came with a surprise. Tesla wanted to showcase the modified Cybertruck that had served through winter storms and summer floods. Engineers had been studying the data from its various rescue missions. And the vehicle had inspired a whole new line of emergency response features for future models. They wanted Andre and his team to demonstrate how they'd adapted the truck for community service. It's not just about the truck anymore, Andre told his parents as they read the invitation. It's about showing other communities what's possible when young people get involved. The summit would be held in California, and Tesla offered to fly not just Andre but several members of his youth emergency response team to attend. The week before the summit, Andre's team gathered at the community center for a special meeting. They had grown from a handful of volunteers to over 100 active members, with chapters starting to form in neighboring cities. The Peterson's daughter, now leading the accessibility initiatives, had developed a comprehensive guide for making emergency response plans more inclusive. "Remember when we thought getting a Cybertruck was the biggest thing that could happen?" One team member laughed as they prepared their presentation. They had documented everything, from the winter rescue missions to the summer flood response, showing how their network had evolved from a simple idea into a working emergency response system. The summit itself was unlike anything André had imagined. Hundreds of young innovators from across the country gathered to share their ideas and experiences. The Cybertruck drew immediate attention, but it was the stories of how it had been used that really captured people's interest. During their presentation, André and his team demonstrated their emergency response app, showing how it coordinated with the truck systems to maximize its effectiveness during crises. The audience was particularly impressed by how they'd turned the vehicle's unique features, its power system, high clearance, and robust design, into tools for community service. The summit's highlight came when Elon Musk himself joined their session. He listened intently as André's team explained how they'd identified gaps in traditional emergency response systems and found ways to fill them. The tech billionaire took notes and asked detailed questions about their experiences. "What impresses me most," Musk said to the audience, "is how these young people saw beyond the technology itself. They understood that the real innovation isn't just in the vehicle's design, it's in how it's used to serve others." He then made an announcement that left everyone stunned. Tesla would be creating a special division focused on emergency response vehicles, and they wanted André's team to serve as youth advisors. The summit also connected André's team with emergency response organizations from around the world. Their app and coordination system had caught the attention of disaster relief agencies looking for ways to better engage young volunteers. Several organizations expressed interest in adapting their model for their own communities. During a break between sessions, André found himself sitting with a group of young innovators from different countries. They shared stories about their own community service projects, and André realized that his experience with the Cybertruck had become part of a much larger movement of young people using technology to make a difference. Back home, the summit's impact was immediate. The local government approved funding to expand the Youth Emergency Response Network, and several businesses offered to sponsor additional emergency response vehicles based on André's team's recommendations. The program was no longer just about one Cybertruck, it was becoming a model for youth-led community service. André's high school added an emergency response training course to its curriculum, with students from his team serving as peer instructors. The program emphasized that while not everyone would have access to advanced technology like a Cybertruck, everyone had the capacity to serve their community in times of crisis. The stories shared at the summit inspired André to start documenting their experiences in a manual that other communities could use. "We've learned so much through trial and error," he explained to his team. "If we can share these lessons, we can help other young people avoid some of the challenges we faced." As work on the manual progressed, André received messages from youth groups around the country asking for advice on starting their own emergency response networks. Each inquiry reminded him of how far they'd come from that first day when he'd run into a burning house without thinking twice. 1 year had passed since that fateful day when André ran into the burning house. As he stood in front of his Cybertruck, now adorned with subtle emergency response markings, he couldn't help but marvel at how one moment of courage had sparked such widespread change. The local news station had requested a special interview to mark the anniversary. They wanted to film at the Petersons' house, which had been completely restored and improved with modern safety features. The Peterson family had become much more than neighbors. They were now an integral part of the Youth Emergency Response Network, with their daughter leading initiatives for inclusive emergency planning. Looking back, André told the interviewer, receiving the Cybertruck wasn't just about getting a reward. It was like being handed a responsibility, a chance to show that young people can make a real difference in their communities. The camera panned to show dozens of teenagers in matching emergency response team uniforms, all part of the program that had grown from that single act of bravery. The interview was interrupted by a notification from their emergency response app. A small brush fire had broken out in a nearby park. Without hesitation, André's team sprang into action, demonstrating for the news crew exactly how their system worked. The Cybertruck, loaded with firefighting equipment, led a convoy of emergency vehicles to the scene. The fire was contained quickly, thanks to the rapid response and coordination between the youth team and professional firefighters. The news crew captured everything, showing how seamlessly the young volunteers worked with emergency services. It was a perfect example of what André had been trying to build, a system where age wasn't a barrier to making a difference. Later that evening, a special ceremony was held at the community center. Representatives from Tesla, local government officials, and emergency services gathered to announce the expansion of the Youth Emergency Response Program to 10 more cities. The Cybertruck sat prominently displayed outside, its silver surface reflecting the setting sun. During the ceremony, Fire Chief Rodriguez shared something unexpected. Since André's program began, he reported, emergency response times in our community have improved by 30%. The coordination between our youth volunteers and professional responders has created a model that other cities are eager to adopt. The mayor presented André with a key to the city, but what really touched him was the announcement that followed. A scholarship fund had been established in his name, dedicated to supporting young people who showed exceptional commitment to community service. The first recipient would be Mrs. Peterson's daughter, who had already been accepted to a prestigious university where she planned to study emergency management. Elon Musk sent another video message for the occasion. When we gave André the Cybertruck, he said, we thought we were rewarding one brave act. Instead, we were investing in a vision of how young people can transform their communities. The return on that investment has been beyond our wildest expectations. The ceremony included the unveiling of plans for a new youth emergency response training center, funded jointly by Tesla and local businesses. The facility would feature simulation technology, allowing young volunteers to practice emergency scenarios safely. The Cybertruck would be permanently displayed there, serving as a symbol of how one person's courage could inspire a movement. André's parents watched proudly as their son addressed the gathering. He had grown not just in height but in confidence and wisdom over the past year. Our story isn't about the Cybertruck, he told the audience. It's about believing that young people can be more than bystanders in their communities. We can be leaders, problem solvers, and change makers. The Youth Emergency Response Network had grown to include over 1,000 members across multiple cities. Their app had been downloaded thousands of times, and similar programs were starting up around the world. The manual André's team had created was being translated into multiple languages, helping other communities establish their own youth response networks. As the ceremony concluded, André took a moment to visit the spot where it all began, the Petersons' former garage where the fire had started. Now rebuilt with state-of-the-art safety systems, it served as a reminder of how adversity could lead to positive change. Mrs. Peterson joined him there, tears in her eyes. You didn't just save our lives that day, she said softly. You showed us all what's possible when someone cares enough to take action. That's a gift worth more than any truck. The story had come full circle, but it was far from over. André knew that each new day brought opportunities to make a difference, to inspire others, and to prove that age is no barrier to heroism. The Cybertruck that had once seemed like an endpoint had become a beginning, a symbol of how technology, courage, and compassion could come together to transform communities. As the sun set on this milestone day, André stood with his team, looking toward the future. The Cybertruck gleamed behind them, no longer just a reward for past bravery, but a beacon of hope for future generations of young leaders. His story had shown that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with a single step toward helping others, and that true heroism isn't about receiving rewards, it's about using whatever gifts you receive to make the world a better place.